The UH's Valor moved silently through the darkness of space. The massive warship, built for battle, now found itself alone in the vast emptiness of the outer rim. Its crew was alert but unaware of the danger that was about to strike. Inside the command center, Captain Elias Carter stood tall, his sharp eyes scanning the holoscreen in front of him. He was a man of experience, a leader who had seen too many battles. The stars outside seemed calm, but Carter knew better. Space was never safe. A sudden alarm echoed through the ship. Red lights flashed across the control panels. "Captain," Lieutenant Vega called out from the scanner station. "We have an unidentified vessel approaching fast." Carter turned sharply. "Identification." Vega's fingers danced over the console. Her face turned pale. "Sir, it's a Crithian warship." Silence fell over the command center. The Crithians, ruthless alien warriors, responsible for destroying entire human colonies. Their technology was advanced, their cruelty unmatched. "Size?" Carter asked, his voice steady. Vega swallowed hard. "It's a Dreadnought-class battleship." Carter clenched his jaw. This was bad. The Crithian dreadnoughts were the largest warships in the enemy fleet, heavily armored, equipped with devastating weapons. The Valor was strong, but against a dreadnought, it was like a knife against a tank. "Time to contact?" he asked. 2 minutes, sir," Vega replied. "They're coming in fast." Carter turned to Tactical Officer Sado. "Raise shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." "Aye, Captain." Sado responded. The ship hummed as its energy shields powered up. The comm station crackled to life. "Sir," Ensign Harper said, voice shaking, "we're receiving a transmission from the enemy ship." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Put it through." A deep, unnatural voice filled the command center. It was cold, emotionless, full of power. "Surrender, human. You cannot win." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Carter's expression remained hard. He leaned forward, speaking clearly. "This is Captain Elias Carter of the UH Valor. You are trespassing in human space. State your purpose." Silence. Then the voice returned. "Your kind is weak. Your ships are fragile. Surrender, and we will grant you a quick death." Carter's fists clenched. He had fought the Crithians before. He knew they never bluffed. If they were here, it meant only one thing. They intended to destroy them. "Sir," Vega said urgently, "they're charging weapons." "Captain," Saito shouted. "Incoming energy blast." Carter reacted instantly. Evasive maneuvers. All hands, brace for impact. The Valor tilted sharply as the enemy ship fired. A massive blue energy blast tore through space, heading straight for them. The crew gripped their consoles as the impact hit. The entire ship shook violently. Sparks flew from overloaded systems. "Shields at 40%, Sato reported. Carter knew they couldn't take many hits like that. He had to act fast. "Return fire," he ordered. The Valor's cannons lit up, sending a storm of missiles and laser fire toward the enemy. But the Crithian dreadnought's shields held strong. Their attacks barely scratched its surface. "Captain," Vega called. 2 more Crithian ships just appeared on the scanners. Carter's stomach dropped. They were outnumbered, outgunned, trapped. The enemy warship sent another transmission. "You cannot escape. You cannot win. Accept your fate." Carter's mind raced. The Valor couldn't outrun them. Its warp drive was damaged from a previous battle. They couldn't win in a direct fight. But surrender, that was never an option. "Sir," Sato said, "we need a plan. Fast." Carter took a deep breath. He stared at the enemy warship on the screen. If brute force couldn't win this battle, maybe something else could. A dangerous idea formed in his mind. It was risky, but it might be their only chance. He turned to Vega. "Scan the enemy ship. Look for anything, any weakness." Vega worked quickly. Her eyes widened. "Captain, I'm detecting an unknown energy signal coming from inside the Crithian ship. Carter frowned. What kind of signal? She shook her head. I don't know. But it's not Crithian tech. A mystery. And in war, mysteries could mean opportunities. Carter's voice was firm. Get me a team. We're going inside that ship. The crew stared at him in shock. Sir, Sato asked. You mean, board the Crithian dreadnought? That's exactly what I mean, Carter said. If we can't destroy it from the outside, we'll take it down from within. The enemy ship powered up its main weapon again, ready to fire a final shot. Carter's voice rang out. Prepare for a boarding mission. We have one chance to survive. The screen flashed red. Enemy blast incoming. The UHS Valor shook violently as the enemy's energy blast struck its shields. The lights flickered, and warning sirens screamed through the ship. Shields down to 10%. Sato shouted over the noise. Captain Carter gripped the command console, his mind racing. Another hit like that, and they were done. The Crithians weren't just playing with them, they were hunting them. We have no time, Captain, Vega said. The enemy is charging their main weapon again. Carter turned to his team. We go with the plan. We board their ship. Sato hesitated. Sir, that's a suicide mission. It's a mission to survive. Carter shot back. We either sit here and die, or we take the fight to them. Sato exhaled sharply, but nodded. No one had a better plan. Carter activated the ship-wide comms. All hands, prepare for emergency boarding operation. This is not a drill. Within minutes, Carter and his handpicked team gathered in the launch bay. Vega, Sato, Sergeant Reynolds, and 3 Special Ops Marines stood ready in their black combat armor. They carried advanced plasma rifles, grenades, and hacking tools. The plan was simple. Enter, disable the ship's power core, and escape. If they could take out the Crithians' main energy source, the UHS Valor could land a killing blow. The boarding pods were loaded, small, fast-moving crafts designed for infiltration. They had no weapons, only thrusters and stealth tech. We have one shot at this, Carter said as the enemy ship loomed closer on their display. They won't expect us to come to them. Sergeant Reynolds grinned. Let's make these bastards regret it. Launch, Carter commanded. The pods shot out of the Valor, weaving through space like shadows. The enemy wasn't scanning for small craft. It was focused on destroying the Valor itself. The pods slipped past undetected. As they neared the Crithian dreadnought, Carter saw the massive alien warship up close. Black metal, sharp edges, glowing red lights along its hull. It looked less like a ship and more like a predator. The pods attached to the hull with magnetic clamps. The Marines cut through the outer plating with plasma torches, the metal hissing as it melted. The moment the breach opened, they stormed in. The corridor was dark, illuminated only by a pulsing blue light from the walls. The air was thick and heavy, like breathing inside a storm cloud. The ship felt alive. Carter signaled for silence. Footsteps echoed in the distance. A Crithian warrior appeared, standing nearly 8 feet tall. Its armor gleamed under the dim lights, its sharp claws clicking against the metal floor. The creature turned its head, sensing something was wrong. Reynolds moved fast. He aimed, fired. A silent plasma bolt hit the Crithian in the neck. The alien collapsed without a sound. They moved forward, past twisted corridors and eerie, glowing walls. Vega checked her scanner. The power core is 300 meters ahead. They turned a corner and froze. A group of Crithian soldiers stood near a control station. They hadn't seen them yet. Carter gave hand signals. Ambush. The team took cover, aiming their weapons. Reynolds threw a stun grenade. Boom. A pulse of blue light flashed, and the Crithians roared in pain, momentarily blinded. The team attacked. Gunfire erupted. Plasma bolts tore through the air, striking Crithian armor. The aliens fired back, their weapons sending red energy beams that burned through the walls. One Marine went down, his armor sizzling. Carter shot a Crithian in the head, the alien collapsing with a guttural growl. The last enemy tried to retreat, but Reynolds tackled him, shoving a blade into his chest. The alien gurgled, then went still. Carter scanned the area. Clear. Vega checked the control panel. "Captain, you need to see this." Carter walked over and saw the strange energy reading again. It wasn't just a power source. It was coming from a room nearby. "Open it," Carter ordered. The doors slid apart. Inside, a human woman was strapped to a machine, her body covered in wires. She looked weak, barely alive. Carter's heart pounded. A human prisoner. Here. Her eyes fluttered open. She gasped. You have to stop them." "Who are you?" Carter asked. "My name is Dr. Arya Novak. I built the weapon they're about to use." Carter's blood ran cold. "What weapon?" Novak's voice trembled. "They're testing something new, something that can destroy an entire fleet in seconds. If we don't stop it now, it's over." Before Carter could respond, the ship's alarm blared. A deep voice echoed through the intercom. "Intruders detected. All units, converge on Sector 3. Vega paled. "Sir, they know we're here." Heavy footsteps rumbled in the distance, dozens of them. The Crithians were coming. Carter clenched his jaw. No turning back now. "Defensive positions," he ordered. "We hold this spot and take out that core." The corridor lights turned red. Shadows moved in the distance. The Crithians were here, and the real fight was about to begin. The Crithians were closing in. Carter could hear their heavy, clawed feet pounding against the metal floors, their guttural voices barking orders in their alien tongue. The red emergency lights flickered, casting long shadows as the Valor's boarding team prepared for the fight of their lives. "Vega, barricade that door," Carter ordered. "Reynolds, cover the corridor. Sato, get Novak out of that machine. Now." Sergeant Reynolds and the Marines took defensive positions, their plasma rifles aimed at the only entrance. Vega worked fast, using her hacking tool to jam the door controls. "Won't hold them for long," she muttered. Carter turned to Dr. Arya Novak, the frail scientist still strapped to the alien machine. Her body was weak, her arms covered in strange burn marks. Whatever the Crithians had done to her, it had nearly killed her. "I can't move," she whispered. "They linked me to the ship's systems. If you pull me out wrong." Sato cursed. "They've integrated her neural signals into the power grid. If we just unplug her, it could trigger a ship-wide failsafe." Carter didn't have time for delicate solutions. "Find another way. Fast." A loud bang came from the door. "They're cutting through," Reynolds warned. His voice was steady, but Carter could hear the tension underneath. Another bang. The metal groaned and warped as something massive slammed into it from the other side. Novak gasped. "It's the War Master. He's here." The room went silent. Even the Marines looked shaken. The Crithian War Masters were elite commanders, towering warriors with enhanced reflexes, near impenetrable armor, and decades of experience slaughtering humans. "Reynolds," Carter said, his voice hard. "If that door opens, we hold this line." Reynolds just nodded, gripping his rifle tighter. Another slam. The door bent inward. Then it happened. The doors exploded inward, sending a shockwave through the room. Carter barely had time to react before a massive armored figure stepped through the smoke, 8 feet tall, covered in thick black plating, its glowing red eyes locked onto them. The Crithian War Master. He carried a massive plasma blade, the edge humming with energy. His voice was a deep growl, full of hate. "Weak, fragile. You do not belong here." Then he charged. Carter fired first. His plasma shots hit dead center, but the War Master barely flinched. His armor absorbed the blasts, the energy dispersing harmlessly. The next second, he was in their ranks. The War Master swung his blade, and one of the Marines was cut clean in half, his body hitting the floor in 2 pieces. Blood sprayed across the walls. Reynolds roared in fury, opening fire with his heavy repeater, the rapid shots slamming into the War Master's armor. The Crithian snarled and backhanded Reynolds with inhuman strength. The Marine flew across the room, smashing into a console with a sickening crack. Vega tried to fire, but the War Master was too fast. He grabbed her by the throat, lifting her off the ground. She gasped, kicking desperately as the alien squeezed. Carter moved. Fast. He drew his shock knife, a weapon designed for close combat. Before the War Master could react, Carter lunged forward and stabbed the blade into the small gap between the alien's armor plates, right under the armpit. A surge of electricity pulsed through the War Master's body. He roared in pain, his grip on Vega loosening just enough for her to kick free. Carter didn't stop. He twisted the knife deeper, forcing more voltage through. The War Master swung wildly, knocking Carter away. The captain hit the floor hard, pain exploding through his ribs. The alien staggered, smoke rising from the wound. He was injured, but not dead. Reynolds groaned, pulling himself up. Blood ran down the side of his face, but he still grabbed his rifle. Vega coughed, trying to catch her breath. The War Master glared at them all. "You will die screaming." Carter wiped blood from his mouth. "Not today." Behind them, Sato shouted, "She's free." Novik fell forward into Sato's arms, shaking violently. Carter turned to her. "Can you disable the ship's core?" She swallowed hard. I think so. But I need time." They didn't have time. The War Master charged again. Carter barely managed to roll aside as the plasma blade carved through the metal floor where he had just been. Reynolds fired again, this time aiming for the exposed wound under the alien's armor. The plasma shot burned through. The War Master howled in agony. Carter saw his chance. He grabbed a Crithian energy grenade from one of the dead soldiers. The War Master was already recovering, preparing to kill them all. Carter pulled the pin and shoved the grenade into the open wound. The War Master's eyes widened in realization. Boom! The explosion sent the massive alien crashing to the floor, smoke and blood pouring from his shattered armor. He let out a final, shuddering breath. Dead. Carter forced himself up, chest heaving. Novak. Now. She worked fast, her fingers flying over the alien console. Almost there. Just a few more seconds. A deep rumble shook the ship. "The core is destabilizing," she said, "but we have a problem." Carter gave her a look, bigger than what we just fought. Novik's face was pale. "If I overload the reactor, the explosion will take out everything in a 10-kilometer radius. That means—" "The Valor," Carter muttered. His ship was still too close. Vega cursed. "We just fought through hell to pull this off, and now we're about to kill our own people." "There's one option," Novik said, "but it's crazy." Carter exhaled. "I'm getting tired of that word." Novik pointed to another console. "We can reroute the energy. But we have to manually pilot this ship straight into the enemy fleet." Carter stared at her. "You want us to fly this dreadnought into the other Crithian warships?" She nodded. "We use their own firepower against them. We take out the entire fleet in one move." Reynolds wiped blood from his chin. "I like it." Sato checked his scanner. "But we've got 1 minute before more Crithians get here. If we're doing this, we need to do it now." Carter made the call. "Everyone to the bridge," he ordered. "We're taking this ship down with us." The team ran toward the command center, the ship trembling beneath their feet. The final battle wasn't over yet. The Crithian dreadnought rumbled as explosions tore through its core. The ship was coming apart, but not fast enough. Carter and his team raced through the corridors, their boots pounding against the alien metal floor. They had one chance to turn this warship into a weapon before reinforcements arrived. Vega checked her wrist scanner. "They're locking down the bridge. If we don't get in now, we'll lose control of the ship." Carter didn't hesitate. He raised his plasma rifle and fired at the door's security panel. Sparks flew as the control system overloaded, and the massive doors slid open just enough for them to squeeze through. Inside, the Crithian command center was a sight to behold. A circular room with a transparent ceiling showed the stars above, the chaos of the battle raging in space. The Crithian fleet loomed in the distance, their weapons charging for another attack on the Valor. The bridge crew, 6 Crithian officers, turned sharply, their glowing red eyes widening in shock. Carter didn't give them time to react. "Take them down." Reynolds and the Marines opened fire, plasma bolts ripping through the air. The Crithians responded with their own weapons, filling the room with burning red energy blasts. Vega dove behind a console, returning fire with precise, controlled shots. Sato flanked left, taking out a Crithian who was reaching for an alarm switch. Novik scrambled to the main control interface, her hands flying over the alien keyboard. "I need 2 minutes to override their system." "Make it 1," Carter growled. A Crithian officer lunged at him with a curved energy blade, its edges crackling with power. Carter sidestepped at the last second, grabbing the alien's wrist and twisting. The Crithian snarled, but Carter slammed his shock knife into its chest. The alien spasmed and collapsed. More Crithians stormed in from the side entrances. Reynolds grabbed a grenade, yanked the pin, and tossed it into the group. Boom! The explosion sent bodies flying, alien blood splattering against the walls. Carter turned to Novik. "Status." She bit her lip, working furiously. "Almost there, but their security AI is fighting me. If I don't bypass it, they'll shut me out completely." Another wave of Crithians entered the bridge. One of them was different. Taller, bulkier, wearing black war armor with gold markings. Vega's face went pale. "That's their fleet commander." Carter's stomach tightened. If a war master was bad, a fleet commander was worse. These were tactical geniuses, warriors bred for both strategy and absolute carnage. The Crithian commander slowly stepped forward, his red eyes cold and calculating. "Humans," his deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "You are outmatched, outnumbered. This ship will not be yours." He raised a 3-bladed staff, its edges glowing with deadly heat. Then he vanished. Carter barely had time to process before the commander reappeared, right in front of him. A blur of motion. The commander's blade slashed through the air, fast as lightning. Carter twisted just in time, but the blade grazed his armor, sending a burst of pain through his side. Reynolds fired, but the commander moved before the shot landed. Vega tried to flank, but the Crithian anticipated her, twisting his weapon and striking her across the chest. She slammed against a console, groaning in pain. Carter barely had time to react before the commander was on him again. He barely blocked the next strike, the impact sending shocks through his arm. This wasn't just strength. This was precision. Experience. A predator playing with its prey. "Captain," Novik called. "I have control, but we need to move now." Carter gritted his teeth. He couldn't win this fight head-on. He needed a distraction. His eyes darted to the overhead control cables, thick bundles of alien wiring hanging above. He made a split-second decision. "Vega, shoot the cables." Vega, still dazed, reacted instantly. Zap! Her plasma shot hit dead center, and the overhead wires snapped free, spilling a surge of high-voltage energy onto the Crithian commander. The alien let out a guttural roar of pain, his body convulsing as the electricity surged through him. Carter didn't hesitate. He grabbed his shock knife and drove it deep into the commander's exposed throat. The Crithian's eyes flickered. He gurgled, his body shuddering. Then he collapsed. Carter pulled back, breathing hard. "Novik, I set the coordinates," he said. "We're on a collision course with their fleet." Sato checked his scanner. "Enemy warships are trying to override us remotely." Novik cursed. "I can block them, but that means we'll have to stay on the ship until impact." Carter didn't even hesitate. "Then we ride this thing into hell." Reynolds let out a dry chuckle. Wouldn't be the first time. Vega wiped blood from her lip. "Escape plan." Carter turned to Sato. "Can we get a message to the Valor?" Sato typed furiously, trying to cut through the Crithian jamming signals. "I can get one short burst transmission before they shut us out." Carter nodded. "Send this. Get clear. We're taking them with us." Sato hit send. A small green light blinked. Transmission sent. Outside, the Crithian fleet loomed closer. Their battleships were adjusting course, trying to avoid the incoming dreadnought. But it was too late. The ship shuddered violently as it entered its final approach. The Crithian warships in the distance opened fire, trying to destroy their own vessel before it could reach them. "Brace for impact," Carter shouted. The bridge exploded in alarms. Red lights flashed. The ship's structure groaned and twisted under the force of its final descent. Through the transparent ceiling, Carter could see the enemy fleet desperately trying to escape, but there was nowhere to run. The Crithian dreadnought crashed into their warships at full speed. A massive explosion erupted, a shockwave of fire and debris spreading through the void. The energy core detonated, igniting like a miniature sun. Carter felt the entire ship rip apart around him. Then, nothing. Silence. Darkness. Was this death? Then a voice. "Captain." A hand grabbed his shoulder. His vision swam back into focus. He wasn't dead. He was in a Crithian escape pod. Vega, Sato, Reynolds, Novak, they were all alive, barely conscious, but breathing. Outside the viewport, the remains of the Crithian fleet drifted in flames. The Valor loomed in the distance, moving toward them. Carter let out a breath. They had done it. But the war was far from over. The escape pod shuddered violently, rattling like a tin can as it drifted through the debris field. The explosion had torn the Crithian fleet apart, but now Carter and his team were trapped in the wreckage, spinning uncontrollably. Sato groaned, gripping the control panel. "This thing wasn't built for humans. The stabilization thrusters are offline." Vega struggled with her harness. "We'll burn up in the atmosphere if we don't correct our course." Through the small viewport, Carter could see the remains of the Crithian dreadnought, its shattered hull glowing as it plunged toward the planet below. Fiery streaks of wreckage rained down like an artificial meteor shower. Then he saw something worse. A Crithian warship was still intact, though heavily damaged. Its engines flickered, barely holding it in orbit, and it was charging its weapons. Reynolds cursed. "That thing's still operational. You gotta be kidding me." Novik's voice was weak, but urgent. "They're targeting the Valor." Carter felt his blood run cold. His ship, his crew. They had no idea the wounded predator was still lurking in the dark. Sato struggled with the comms. "They knocked out our long-range signal. We can't warn them." Vega clenched her jaw. "We're too far. By the time they see the attack, it'll be too late." Carter made a decision, a reckless one. "We're not just gonna sit here." He turned to Sato. "Can you override the pod's thrusters? Give us a manual burst." Sato hesitated, then nodded. "It'll be rough, and if we screw up, we'll crash right into the planet." Carter locked eyes with him. Better than watching the Valor get vaporized. Sato swallowed, then got to work. The pod lurched, spinning wildly as he forced a crude manual override. The thrusters spat out short, erratic bursts, trying to compensate for the damage. Through the viewport, the Crithian warship's main cannon began to glow, building up a final deadly shot aimed directly at the Valor's engines. They had seconds. Almost there. Almost. Sato's fingers flew over the alien controls. The escape pod jerked violently, tilting toward the warship's exposed weapons array. Carter didn't wait. "Fire whatever we've got." Reynolds grabbed the emergency Crithian pulse rifle they had scavenged earlier and aimed it straight at the viewport. "This is insane." "Do it," Carter yelled. Boom. Reynolds fired. The window shattered outward, venting their air supply into space. The sudden decompression launched the pod forward, sending them spiraling straight toward the Crithian warship. Vega barely managed to grab onto the side panel before she was sucked toward the breach. "Next time, warn me, before we blow a hole in our ride." The pod slammed against the Crithian warship's hull, skidding along the surface before coming to a dead stop near a secondary airlock. The emergency lights flickered. Sparks danced in the cramped interior. They were alive. Barely. Seto coughed. "Well, that was creative." Carter unstrapped himself. No time to celebrate. "If we don't take out those weapons now, the Valor is dead." The team moved quickly, prying open the escape pod's emergency exit and climbing onto the Crithian warship's exterior hull. The cold of space bit into their skin, their suits barely insulating them from the vacuum. They moved in zero gravity, using magnetic grips to pull themselves toward the exposed airlock. Vega hacked the controls. The door slid open, revealing the dark, eerie interior of the dying warship. "Weapons bay should be this way," Novak whispered. They moved in silence, their boots barely making a sound on the alien metal floor. Something dripped from the ceiling. Reynolds frowned. "What the hell is?" Then the walls moved. Dark shapes unfolded from the shadows, their elongated limbs twitching, glowing red eyes snapping open in unison. Carter's stomach dropped. Crithian shock troopers. Vega inhaled sharply. "I thought they were all dead." Shock troopers weren't normal soldiers. They were berserkers. Left behind as a last line of defense, programmed to fight to the death. One of them let out a low, inhuman growl. Then they attacked. Carter fired first, his plasma shots ripping through the nearest trooper, but the others moved too fast. One slammed into Vega, knocking her against a control panel. Another lunged at Reynolds, its razor-sharp claws scraping against his armor. Novak barely dodged a strike, rolling across the floor. Sato tried to shoot one, only for the trooper to catch the plasma bolt in midair, absorbing the energy. "Are you kidding me?" Sato yelled. Carter drew his shock knife, dodging a wild swing before driving the blade into a trooper's throat. The alien shuddered, then collapsed. Reynolds managed to break free, grabbing a fallen Crithian rifle and blasting another trooper in the chest. The creature shrieked and fell, smoke rising from its wound. Novak grabbed a loose power conduit and jammed it into a trooper's side. Electricity surged through the alien, frying it from the inside out. "Doors!" Carter shouted. Vega, still dazed, slammed her fist against the control panel. The bulkhead slammed shut, trapping the last few troopers on the other side. Silence. Heavy breathing. Blood, some human, some not, stained the floor. That, Reynolds panted, was awful. Novak wiped sweat from her forehead. "We have less than 2 minutes before that cannon fires." Carter gritted his teeth. "Then we move. Now." They rushed through the final corridor, reaching the weapons bay just as the main cannon fully charged. A deep hum filled the air. A Crithian weapons officer stood at the main console, frantically working to keep the cannon locked onto the Valor. He turned, eyes wide, reaching for his communicator. Reynolds shot him first. Carter didn't hesitate. He sprinted to the control panel, gripping the alien controls. "How do we disable it?" Novak scanned the interface. "We can't." Vega cursed. "What do you mean we can't?" Novak's hands flew over the console. "The cannon is already locked into its firing cycle. If we cut the power, it'll still fire with whatever energy is left in the capacitor." Carter's mind raced. There had to be another way. Then he saw it. A secondary targeting system. A manual override. And an idea so insane, it just might work. He turned to the others. "We can't shut it down, but we can redirect the shot." Vega's eyes widened. "You want to fire it at what?" Carter didn't blink. "The planet below." The room fell silent. Seto exhaled. "If we do that, the impact will be like a nuclear detonation." Carter stared at the screen. The Crithians had colonies down there. Bases, war factories, and billions of their own kind. Vega swallowed. Are we really about to? Reynolds didn't hesitate. Do it. Carter flipped the override switch. The cannon recalibrated, its trajectory shifting downward. Then, boom! A blinding white blast ripped through the atmosphere, streaking toward the surface. A moment later, the planet lit up like a second sun, and nothing would ever be the same. The explosion blossomed like a dying star, ripping through the Crithian strongholds on the planet below. The atmosphere boiled, shockwaves flattening entire cities in an instant. What had once been a hub of Crithian military power was now a burning wasteland. From their vantage point aboard the warship, Carter and his team watched the devastation unfold in stunned silence. The cannon's energy beam had cut across the planet's surface, igniting everything in its path. The Crithians had never expected their own weapon to be turned against them. Seto swallowed hard. That was a lot bigger than I thought. Reynolds exhaled. We just wiped out half their infrastructure in one shot. Vega's jaw was clenched, and probably millions of their people. Carter didn't flinch. If we hadn't done it, they would have destroyed the Valor and every human colony in range. This war didn't start today, Vega. It ends when one side can't fight anymore. No one responded. There was nothing left to say. Then, an alarm. Novik checked the console. We've got a problem. Multiple problems. Seto groaned. Of course we do. The energy discharge fried this ship's reactor, Novik continued. We have maybe 5 minutes before it goes critical. Reynolds holstered his weapon. Perfect. And let me guess, no escape pods left. Not a single one, Novik confirmed. Carter clenched his fists. Then we need an extraction. Can we reach the Valor? Vega shook her head. Still jammed. That warship we took down was their command vessel, but there are other Crithian ships nearby. If they get here before we escape, we're dead. Sato squinted at his scanner. About that. A Crithian dreadnought loomed in the distance. Unlike the crippled fleet they had just fought, this one was fully operational. Its sleek obsidian hull bristled with charged weaponry. Carter's stomach tightened. They sent reinforcements. Reynolds scoffed. Well, that was fast. Vega's fingers hovered over the control panel. If they realize what we did, they'll tear this ship apart just to make sure we don't survive. Novik's expression darkened. I think they already know. The Crithian dreadnought adjusted its course, heading straight for them. And then it opened fire. Massive plasma lances streaked through space, ripping into the dying warship they were standing on. The ship lurched, metal twisting and breaking apart. Carter grabbed the nearest console for support. We're out of time. We need tow. The deck collapsed beneath them. Gravity vanished. For a terrifying moment, they were falling, not toward the planet, but into the abyss of space as the warship broke apart around them. Then, a beam of blue light surrounded them. Vega gasped. What the hell? The next thing Carter knew, he was inside a ship. The cold vacuum of space was gone. Air rushed into his lungs. He hit the metal floor hard, disoriented and breathless. Reynolds groaned next to him. Sato and Novik coughed as they scrambled to their feet. They weren't alone. Carter's vision cleared just in time to see a group of figures standing above them. Not humans. Not Crithians. Something else. Vega pulled her pistol. The tallest figure tilted its head, regarding her with something almost like amusement. Put it away, human. A voice echoed in perfect English. If we wanted you dead, you wouldn't be standing. Carter's fingers tightened around his weapon. Who the hell are you? The figure stepped forward, revealing a humanoid form, clad in sleek white armor, its face hidden behind an intricate mask of metal and glowing blue lines. We are called the Valeri, the being said, and we have been watching you for some time. Carter frowned. Watching us. Yes, the Valeri's voice was calm, but heavy with meaning. And now we must decide if humanity is worthy of survival. Reynolds scoffed. Oh, great. Another bunch of aliens deciding our fate. The Valeri didn't react to the sarcasm. Novik swallowed. What do you mean, worthy of survival? The alien studied them for a moment, then gestured toward the viewport behind them. Carter turned, and his breath caught in his throat. The Crithian dreadnought wasn't alone. Beyond it, an entire fleet of Crithian warships was emerging from slip space. Dozens, hundreds, enough to wipe out humanity 10 times over. Vega whispered, they were never just sending reinforcements. This was their real invasion force. The Valeri spoke again, voice unreadable. You may have won a battle today, humans. Then the alien turned its gaze toward the massive Crithian fleet, its glowing blue eyes unreadable. But the war, it exhaled. The war has just begun. Carter had seen a lot of things in this war: burning planets, dying comrades, impossible victories won by sheer human stubbornness. But this was something else. The Crithian invasion fleet stretched across the void like a vast, living organism, its warships moving in perfect, terrifying synchronization. Hundreds of them. And behind him, the Valeri, an advanced alien race that had been watching humanity from the shadows, now deciding whether to let them live or stand aside and let the Crithians wipe them out. Carter turned to the lid Valeri warrior, his hand itching toward his sidearm. You haven't answered my question. What the hell do you mean, worthy of survival? The Valeri leader, his armor pulsing with strange bioluminescent symbols, regarded Carter for a long moment. Then he gestured toward the Crithian fleet. This is not just a battle, human. It is a test. Sato scoffed. A test. You're saying we're being graded on whether we live or die. The alien nodded. Yes. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. And if we fail, then the Crithians will finish what they started. Carter clenched his jaw. And what about you? You're just gonna stand here and watch. The Valeri tilted his head slightly. That depends on you. Novik frowned. You have the technology to stop this. You pulled us out of a ship seconds from exploding. For crying out loud, if you wanted to, you could destroy every Crithian warship in this sector. The Valeri's glowing eyes didn't waver. Perhaps. Vega let out a bitter laugh. But you won't, will you? The alien shook his head. No. Carter's hands curled into fists. Then get the hell out of our way. We'll fight this war ourselves. The Valeri warrior smiled, or at least Carter thought it was a smile. Good. That is the answer we were looking for. Before Carter could respond, the entire ship shuddered. An explosion, not outside, but inside. Klaxons blared in a deep, unfamiliar tone. The Valeri leader turned sharply, his armor glowing brighter. His people looked just as alarmed as the humans. Novik grabbed her scanner. What the hell was that? Sato's voice was grim. Something's on board. And then the screaming started. It wasn't human. It wasn't even Crithian. It was something worse. The corridor collapsed inward, as if something had ripped through it from the inside out. A dark, writhing mass poured through the breach. Black tendrils, shifting, twisting, forming something vaguely humanoid, but impossibly wrong. Carter had never seen anything like it before. Vega's eyes widened. What in the name of? The thing moved. It was fast. Faster than any Crithian soldier. Faster than any predator Carter had ever seen. It hit the nearest Valeri warrior with enough force to break him in half. Blood, thick, black, and glowing, splattered across the walls. The other Valeri reacted instantly, weapons emerging from their armor, firing bursts of blue plasma into the creature. It did nothing. The creature absorbed the energy, its body shifting, morphing as if it was learning, adapting. Then it moved again, tearing into another Valeri soldier, ripping him apart as if he were made of paper. Reynolds took a step back. We need to go. Now. More screams echoed down the corridor. It wasn't alone. Sato grabbed his rifle. I don't know what that is, but I'm shooting it. Carter made a split-second decision. Fighting is pointless. We need to get off this ship. The Valeri leader turned to him, uncharacteristically urgent. You do not understand. This enemy, this is the reason we have been watching you. Vega fired her plasma rifle. The creature barely reacted, only twitching before continuing its advance. Carter gritted his teeth. What do you mean? The Valeri leader pressed a glowing sigil on his armor, and suddenly, a holographic star map appeared between them. It showed the Milky Way galaxy, and it was crawling with these things. Dark masses moving between star systems, infecting, devouring, erasing civilizations from existence. Novik paled. This isn't just an attack. The Valeri warrior nodded grimly. No, it is a harvest. Carter felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. The Crithians weren't the real enemy. They were running from something worse. And now, it was here. The ship shook again, another breach opening somewhere deep within. More screams, Valeri, and something else, something alien and dying at the same time. Reynolds fired another shot. Less talking, more running. Carter didn't need to be told twice. Movie. They bolted down the corridor, following the Valeri as the ship began to collapse around them. Carter's mind raced. If this thing was loose on the Valeri ship, it was only a matter of time before it spread. And if it reached the Crithian fleet, or worse, human space, they needed to warn someone, if there was even anyone left to warn. The Valeri leader activated a transport beacon, and for the second time that day, Carter's world went white. Carter's vision blurred as the white light faded. His boots hit solid metal, but his mind was still spinning. 1 second ago, he had been running for his life. And now, he was on another ship. This one was sleek, massive, and unmistakably Valeri. The walls pulsed with faint blue energy, the air thrumming with a low, vibrating hum. The rest of the team materialized beside him. Vega, Reynolds, Novak, Sato. They staggered, still processing what had happened. Vega sucked in a breath. Did we just escape? Sato finished. He looked around, frowning. I think so, but I don't know if that was a rescue or a relocation. Carter turned. The Valeri leader stood nearby, his white armor faintly scorched from battle. He was watching them carefully. Carter took a step toward him. What the hell just happened? What were those things? The Valeri's expression darkened. You were not meant to see them yet. Reynolds let out a bitter laugh. Well, we did. And now you're gonna tell us what we're dealing with. The alien hesitated, then raised a hand. A new holographic projection appeared, this one different from before. It showed a planet. No, many planets. Human colonies. But they were wrong. Carter's stomach clenched. The cities were twisted, their structures covered in a black, shifting mass, the same dark substance they had seen on the Valeri ship. This, the alien said, is what remains of the last civilization that faced them. Vega's hands curled into fists. You knew they were coming. The Valeri warrior inclined his head slightly. We suspected, but we needed to be sure humanity was ready. Novik's voice was tight with frustration. Ready for what? The hologram shifted again. This time, it showed Earth. Untouched, still whole. For now. The Valeri's voice was heavy. For a war unlike any you have ever fought. Carter's blood ran cold. They had spent years fighting the Crithians, thinking they were the ultimate threat. But the Crithians, they had been running. Running from this. Reynolds exhaled sharply. You're telling us the Crithians aren't even the real enemy? No, the Valeri said. They are merely your first war. The weight of the words settled over them. Sato whispered, and this is the second. The alien warrior nodded. Silence. Then Carter straightened, his voice firm. If you knew this was coming, why didn't you warn us? The Valeri hesitated. Because warnings are meaningless. If you had not been hardened by your war with the Crithians, you would not have survived long enough to face the true enemy. Vega's expression darkened. You used us. We tested you, the Valeri corrected. And you passed. Reynolds crossed his arms. And what if we hadn't? The alien didn't answer. But they all knew. Carter took a breath. His mind was racing, but he knew one thing for sure. The Crithian War was over. But humanity's real battle was just beginning. Carter looked at the Valeri leader, his voice unwavering. Then let's stop wasting time. The alien studied him, then nodded slowly. Very well, human. The hologram flickered again, this time, showing fleets gathering, battle formations taking shape. The Valeri warrior met Carter's gaze. Then let us see if humanity is truly ready.